12, and do not adjust your sets. There is no PMQs until 3 o'clock today, so it'll be on Sheila Fogarty's time, and it'll be up to Sheila to decide whether or not she takes it live or picks over the bones with Theo Usherwood or Ben Kentish, whoever is in the room after it has been completed. I mentioned that because a couple of you have texted, what no PMQs? Oh, it's a tough one, that, isn't it? Because I have this constant battle with myself over whether or not we should take it live every week or not. I genuinely don't know. I have a feeling this year might be the year that we stop taking it live. I wish I could do a referendum. Unfortunately, it's a very unrepresentative sample. Even everyone who's kind enough to text and tweet, it's going to be a tiny fraction of the people listening. I don't know. Can you imagine anyone going, oh, I must put LBC on because James will be doing PMQs, if you hadn't already tuned in? Although yesterday, I can't remember what I was doing, but I saw it was 5 o'clock and I thought I must put Eddie on because I know he'll be taking the press conference in its full entirety. And lo and behold, I turned on the radio and he interrupted Amelia Cox's news bulletin to make sure that we could go live to the press conference from Boris Johnson, in which he said precisely nothing. But of course it was still important to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. I digress slightly. I mentioned just before the break that I enjoy peppering our conversations with popular culture references because I'm very lucky that I get to see stuff. I live in London and I get sent tickets to see some stuff, and I spend my own money on other stuff. Cabaret last night with Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley, 5 stars from me, but that was not a freebie, I should stress. That was a birthday present for my brother-in-law. It was a lovely day out, a lovely night out. But I also, what else have I mentioned? I've mentioned The King's Man, I've mentioned Don't Look Up, I've mentioned loads of stuff to you, but I haven't mentioned Harry Potter, which I watched again over Christmas. I got 4 in. It's my oldest, actually, not my youngest. We just love watching Harry Potter together, and we got 4 in over Christmas. It must be the 6th time I've watched them, 700th time she's watched them. I love it. I love Harry Potter. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I love this game, not necessarily for the right reasons. A public figure, usually from the world of entertainment, because I don't think it would be possible to do this from the world of politics, maybe from the world of sport, but that's tricky because you might support a different team or cheer a different participant. If you could pick a public figure who enjoyed almost universal approval, somebody approaching saintly status, you said, who would you put on that list? Right? And you'd put David Attenborough on that list, right? Everybody likes David Attenborough, Sir David Attenborough to you. I think that's fair to say. If you don't, then you're in such a tiny minority and you're probably being performatively contrary, and therefore you can get stuck. So, and I would have put Stephen Fry on that list, but turns out some people don't like Stephen Fry, including a family member, because I played this game over lunch, sort of said, who would you put on that list of people that everybody likes? Like someone approaching a sort of secular sainthood, you could call it. And not that long ago, I'd have put J.K. Rowling on that list. I think Harry Potter is such a force for good, such a beautiful, beautiful series of books, so perfectly realised, so powerfully written, powerfully realised and beautifully written, that I don't think anyone would really have disagreed. You can't have had a strong negative opinion about J.K. Rowling. There were some sort of happy-clappy types who I think objected to the portrayal of witchcraft and wizardry on religious grounds, which, you know, that's your prerogative, just as it's my prerogative to tell you that you're crackers. But I think J.K. Rowling would have been on that list, wouldn't she? She'd have been a contender up alongside the David Attenboroughs of this world. If you go back to that Olympic opening ceremony that we referred to in the last hour, that vision of Britain, which living public figures? I'd put Gary Lineker on there, but of course he keeps upsetting racists, so there's plenty of people in the country that don't like Gary either these days. But you national treasures, what time is it? 7 minutes after 12, and that was the phrase, national treasures. That was the phrase I was looking for. I used to write a little column for the Express called National Treasures, and it would be, well, obviously anyone, and I used to love that, just writing a couple of hundred words, bigging up someone. Joanna Lumley, for example, would have been a good contender for a national treasure. Mo Molan, actually, if you had to pick someone from the world of politics, would have been close to a national treasure. J.K. Rowling, stone cold national treasure, until relatively recently, when she waded into the debate, the widespread debate about transgender issues, and continues to be widely attacked for her opinions in that field, in that area. Michael Palin, everyone's texting me national treasures now, aren't you? Which is fine. Michael Palin, it's like a list of full disclosure guests, this list of national treasures. That's a good advert for the system. But J.K. Rowling has today come under attack, or this week come under attack from Jon Stewart. Now, Jon Stewart is a former host of The Daily Show on American television. He's also a stand-up comedian. And for my money, he's a stone-cold genius. He is probably my favourite proponent of that genre. You know, that David Letterman, Jay Leno, that world of... Who did it begin with? Who was his predecessor on the... James Corden does it now, doesn't he, on The Late Show? But, and you've got what's the South African lad called who took over from Jon Stewart? I can't remember. It'll come to me. Trevor Noah. You've got that whole that ability. Jonathan Ross, brilliant at it. Graham Norton, brilliant at it. Actually, if we're going to get patriotic about it, but that quicksilver wit combined with the genuine interest in the guests, I just think he's a genius, and I pay attention to what he says. I paid money, real cash money, to see him at the Albert Hall when he was doing a gig with Dave Chappelle. And he has set his sights on J.K. Rowling, and I wonder if you can guess why. I'll give you a clue. It's got nothing to do with trans issues, and we will not be talking about trans issues this hour. We'll be talking very specifically about what Jon Stewart has accused Joanne Rowling of. Do you want to have a guess? Can you guess? No, don't cheat if you haven't seen it already. Because it's really stopped me in my tracks, this. There are two reasons why I almost didn't talk about this with you today. The first is that I really love J.K. Rowling, and that's a controversial enough opinion to hold in the context of what she said about transgender issues without adding to the burdens that we're about to add to by telling you why Jon Stewart has attacked her. I don't want my love of Harry Potter to be diluted. And the second reason, actually, is because Nick, at the end of his show, had a conversation about Maureen Lipman suggesting that Helen Mirren shouldn't be able to play Golda Meir because she's not Jewish. Helen Mirren, not Jewish. And I just felt that for Jewish listeners, the conversation we're about to have might just make you feel a bit besieged. I don't know. I've reflected on that, and I think I'm wrong. I don't think it does. But I just mentioned that in passing, because what Jon Stewart has accused J.K. Rowling of is anti-Semitism, which is a vicious thing to be accused of, if it's not true. Actually, oddly, for completely different reasons, the young woman who played Hermione, Emma Watson, has also been accused of anti-Semitism, but we won't go down that avenue today, for reasons that, as far as I can tell, are fairly spurious. But I'm not Jewish, so I don't necessarily have a clear-eyed view of this issue. I think Emma Watson has expressed sympathy for Palestinian people, and an Israeli diplomat has used that to accuse her of anti-Semitism, which seems to me to be spurious. But the J.K. Rowling story is a lot less nuanced, because the more I look at it and the more I think about it, the more troubled I am by what Jon Stewart has said. You need a passing familiarity with the Harry Potter story to have already worked out what it is that may perhaps have seen this accusation levelled. 12 minutes after 12, I just want to say categorically, don't ring me about Emma Watson and don't ring me about transgender issues, all right? This hour you won't get on the radio, and all you'll do is clog up the switchboard for people who want to contribute to the conversation that we're actually having. So that is the closest I get to schoolmasterish tones. We are not talking about that. Neither are we talking about the correct pronunciation, Brian, of Leno or Leno. I believe you may be right, it is Jay Leno, but